Hey Blaze, did you have a good weekend? Yeah, what'd you do? You don't know? What was your favorite part of the weekend?
I forgot what my favorite part of the weekend is.
Oh, okay. Isn't it cool that we have all this technology so you can talk to your friends and stuff even though you aren't in school? Yeah, that's cool, right? Yeah. We've been watching Lego Masters. That's cool, right? Yeah. Are you going to be on Lego Masters?
No.
No. You don't like Legos that much?
Not that much.
Not that much.
Even though I just made a Lego saucers and still no.
Still no. Okay. No. That's cool. Do you want to say hi to anybody who might be watching?
Sure.
It's called a shout out. If you give a shout out to somebody, who do you want to give a shout out to?
Miss Lalani.
We'll look in the camera and say shout out Miss Lalani.
Shout out Miss Lalani.
Yeah. Anybody else?
Uh.
You should probably shout out your other teacher too, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shout out Miss Cardoso.
Yeah, alright. Is that it?
Well, I guess I have one more.
Okay, go for it.
Shout out William.
William. Okay. Oh, 3 o'clock. Let's do it. Alright. We are back. What's up, everybody? At Casa Baker. I am joined today by Duke Kaboom, all the way from Canada, with a sweet blonde hairdo. What do you say, Duke Kaboom?
Kaboom!
Kaboom! Alright. I love Duke Kaboom because obviously it was played by the immaculate Keanu Reeves. I wish he were here, but that's okay. Keanu, if you're watching, you're welcome anytime. So, today we're going to be making quiche. It's kind of a twofer. You're getting a little bonus here because you're going to see my top secret super turbo pie dough that I use when I'm in a rush and I'm not worried about it being the most flaky thing in the world. It's still flaky, but like it's not puff pastry flaky. So this is my turbo pie dough, and then we will transition from that into quiche because we will be fully baking the shell empty, or blind baking as it's traditionally called. Do you know why it's called blind baking? Okay, you think about it. We'll talk about it once I get it in the oven because we have to kill some time in the middle, okay? Think. Okay, so for our pie crust, we have 6.5 ounces of flour. And you see I'm using a food processor today. It makes my life so much easier. If you do not have a food processor, that's fine. This can be done in the bowl of a stand mixer. You could do this by hand. Then we will add 4 ounces of cold butter, straight from the fridge. It's pretty important that it's cold, otherwise it won't break down the right way and our dough will be difficult to work with. So, we lock that in, pulse, pulse, pulse. You want to get that butter broken down nice and even throughout the pastry. Once I'm here, I will add some salt and some pepper because I'm doing a quiche. It will be savory, but if you were going to do a sweet crust, I would, keep that in mind. I would not add any large amounts of sugar to anything because, as you should know by now, it changes the way everything bakes. So, in the bowl, we have flour, butter, ground together. We have some seasoning. Today I'm using salt and pepper. And to this, we will add 4 ounces of cream cheese. Now, cream cheese is kind of the secret ingredient here. It will give us a really nice texture on our dough. It will have enough acids where it will inhibit the gluten formation so that we can roll it pretty quickly and use it right away. And then this will make our pie dough right here in the machine. What we're going to do is we're going to pulse it a couple times just to kind of get it started. Then we're going to turn it on high and we're not going to stop until it forms its own dough ball. It's pretty cool to watch. So here we go. Mixing, mixing, mixing. See it starting to form. And when it cleans the bowl, I'm done. This is my super turbo pie dough. Done, right? Easy, easy. It was quick, right? So,
is that why it's called turbo pie dough?
That is why I call it turbo pie dough. Now, technically, this recipe I got when I was making empanadas. So if you understand what empanada dough is, it's still flaky, it's very, very strong, and it rolls out super, super thin if we need it to, or we can keep it kind of bulky if we need it to. It's very easy to use. If I was going to try and make the smoothest, most flaky pie dough in the world, I would use something closer to puff pastry, but for everyday applications, this is enough. We've seen this before, my plastic wrap trick. That way I don't have to use a ton of flour on the counter or anywhere else. All right, can you help me out here, Duke?
Sure.
Yeah, you hold that side, we'll stretch it out. Kaboom, all right. Right, so, yep, you're okay. All right, now put it down. Done. Take our pie dough, press it down. The reason we use our cold butter is we want to make sure that it stays cold. That way we can start rolling it right away, right? The reason we chill dough so much is we want to inhibit that gluten formation, which will really...
Do it a little bit?
Sure, you can roll it. Just try not to roll it too much.
Okay.
The gluten formation is what's going to fight us when you roll your dough and it stretches back, like it starts to spring back on you. That's gluten fighting you. So we try to keep it cold to inhibit gluten formation. Plus I already said the acid in the cream cheese will also fight gluten formation. So it'll be really, really nice, and it'll just be super easy for us to use. Now, I have rolled all kinds of doughs in my day. And a lot of times in commercial operations, we have what's called a sheeter, which is a giant automatic rolling pin. But here at the house, I have a series of rolling pins also. My favorite one is this one. It is a very, very thin French rolling pin. Some people call it a rolling pin, and it has tapered ends. You'll notice I don't use American rolling pins with the handles on the edges. There's absolutely nothing wrong with those. I just never used those in my career, so it seems really awkward to me. They're great if you're gonna roll for long, long periods of time. I also have what's called an English rolling pin, which is completely straight. It's basically a really fat dowel rod with slightly tapered ends. This one's nice if I just want to make sure that everything's super, super even. It's also nice when someone steps out of line. What do you think, dude? Kaboom, you've been a good boy today? Okay, I don't actually beat you. It was a joke. But anyway, so we rolled out our pie dough. Again, super, super easy. I'm going for 1/4 to kind of 3/8 of an inch here. Anything else will be too thick. As I said before, it looks good, but when I run my hand across the surface, I can feel some irregularities. So holding your rolling pin, just slide it, and that'll help smooth out those irregularities. Nice, right? We take our pie pan. I obviously am using a glass pie pan today. You might have a metal one, or a clay one, or a dark colored one. It doesn't really matter. We like glass, even though it's extremely fragile, because we can just look at it, right? So it's nice when I pull it out of the oven, I can just look at the bottom and say, oh, I need to cook it more. If you don't have a glass one, it's totally fine. For what we're gonna do today, the blind baking, it's not really gonna matter. So it'll be completely fine. Use whatever vessel you have, all right? It's okay. It made a tiny little tear, but we will fix it, all right? So we get our dough. Don't be afraid to use your whole arm for this. And we will lay our dough in there, just like that. Where it tore, it's fine. Now, the secret to getting the dough completely in the pan is to pull it all the way back and let it kind of drape into the corners. We don't want any little air pockets to form because that'll create a huge temperature difference, and it can very easily burn the dough that sits under it. So you pull the dough back and then you kind of drape it all the way down from the bottom up. We press it into place very gently. All right. And obviously I have too much dough, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go through, and because we're working fast, we're just gonna tear it. We can just tear our dough. If you wanted to make it super decorative, you definitely could. We're just tearing our dough today. That way we can get it done, right? Now this extra, set it aside, chill it, freeze it. It's good for a very, very long time. If you roll it out really thin, it's actually super delicious crackers, right? Cracker, yeah. So I'm gonna give my dough once over. And then where I tore it, I'm gonna roll it over just a little bit. That way it's even. I'm not super worried about like a decorative edge on a quiche. If you wanted to, of course, you can do whatever you want. There's plenty of tutorials out there in the world for decorative edges. Yes, Kaboom Blaze.
Why are we making pie crust right now if we're supposed to be making quiche?
Okay, so quiche is what goes in the pie crust. The pie crust is what will hold the quiche. Does that make sense?
No.
And I'm going to answer your question even better in a second, but we need to get this in the oven. So we have our pie dough. It's here, it's ready, right? We need to bake it in the oven empty because the quiche bakes at such a low temperature that we can't bake the crust fully at that low temperature. And if we put that liquid of a filling in raw dough, it probably won't cook at all anyway. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take our trusty plastic wrap. If you've never baked plastic wrap before, it's totally safe. Lean back, Duke, kaboom. You're cool. And then we're gonna fold it over, we're gonna double it up. You need way more plastic wrap than it looks like you need. So you see I have a whole bunch extra. And this is where you can use those trusty pie weights if you have them. Now, as a professional, pie weights are way too expensive for any real kitchen to have a huge amount of them. So we use dried rice or dried beans or a mixture of both. This is brown rice that I have baked probably 100 times, and I keep it in the bag in my pantry. And when I need to bake a pie empty like we are today, I put the rice in, I bake it, well, as much rice as it needs, right? Lift your plastic wrap a little bit, make sure we're getting it nice and even all the way around. And then drape your plastic wrap into the center, so when it melts, because it will melt a little, it'll create its own little pocket for you. Okay, so here's how we blind bake. We took plastic wrap, double it over, used way more than you think you need. Put rice in it until we can at least cover the top and it presses into the sides, and then drape the plastic wrap back over it so that as it melts in the heat, it melts together to create a nice little sachet. Into the oven, hot. We're going 425. We're gonna bake it for a few minutes. The goal here, hold on. The goal here, and step up, is to set the sides of our pie crust, because what's under all this rice isn't gonna cook. Now, if I try to bake it without that, what's gonna happen is as the fat starts melting, the pie dough is gonna slide down and we're gonna get basically one giant biscuit with this weird little like curl on the end, almost like a mustache. And we can't really fill that because it'll be too short. So we need to fill it so that it will stay in the shape that we want so that we can fill it with the quiche later. Now, Duke Blaze, what was your question?
There was a little tiny space out of the plastic wrap, and we could have used that rice to kind of fill it up before we put it in wrap, you know?
Yes. Kaboom Blaze is calling out that I did not do an absolutely perfect 100% job, and goodness knows I don't hear it enough, so thank you. But yes, you can fill it better and more completely, but as long as we have weight in there to hold the sides in place, it's fine. If you have a metal pan, it'll go faster. How long it cooks is really kind of a determination of how thick your dough is, how hot your oven is, things like that. So what we're gonna do is we're just gonna check it periodically to make sure that the sides have formed evenly and that they are starting to brown. And when I say brown, I don't mean like a little bit of brown. I want them to already be brown before I take the rice out, okay? What else you got? Any other questions? Are there any questions out there about blind baking? All right, Duke Blaze, why do you think it's called blind baking? Seems like a weird word, right? Are we supposed to bake like this?
Yeah.
Yep, no, that'd be super impossible. The closest thing I've ever found or heard or studied or anything says that it is blind baking because the pie, as in the idea of the pie, is blind to what pie it will be when it's done. Like, this is what we call the shell, the pie shell. You can fill it with anything once we've already baked it. So this savory pie could easily be filled with chocolate ganache or banana cream, or today we're gonna do quiche, or we could fill it with cheesecake. So the pie itself is blind to what it will become later. But who knows? It's a weird old English thing that I actually don't know the full answer to. What do you think, Duke Kaboom Blaze? You got a quiche joke for us as we start to transition over to quiche?
Uh-huh.
Okay, tell them, don't tell me.
How does a pie unlock a door?
How does a pie unlock a door? I don't know. How does a pie unlock a door?
With a quiche.
With a quiche. It's kind of a stretch, but okay. So, what do you know about quiche, bud?
Well, what I really know is that I kind of think it's a kind of vegetable.
A vegetable, okay. Well, quiche originated in Germany, in the region of France later named Lorraine. It was a pie, right, filled with egg custard, typically with smoked bacon and, of course, delicious, delicious cheese, okay? Now, the reason we're doing quiche is, obviously, we're going to eat that for dinner. It's Meatless Monday, so it's easy to go meatless with quiche. We're primarily a vegetarian household. I eat plenty of meat on the side anyway, but but it's fine. Now, the thing about these quiche is they can hold just about anything inside them that you want. Now, the big rule of thumb here is that as we cook the egg custard, it is very unlikely to cook anything that is inside of it, which means don't put raw meats inside the egg custard. Everything we make needs to already be cooked because it's unlikely to cook in the eggs. So, somebody's commenting, I said 425 and the recipe says 400. It's just, I'm trying to go faster. I say you bake as hot as you can if you can keep an eye on it. I would say for everybody at home, 400 is a pretty safe place to start. If you're a seasoned cook and you've made plenty of mistakes and learned from them, you can bake this thing at 600 degrees if you're paying attention. Speaking of paying attention, I'm gonna take a look. Getting close. We're getting close to pulling the rice out. Now, what can we put in our quiche? Typically, quiche is the egg custard. It is cheese, and it is vegetables and or meat. I cannot say this enough. You need to pre-cook your meat because it will not cook in the custard if you put it in raw. It's very, very dangerous. Any vegetables that you want to have any kind of extra flavor or anything needs to also be pre-cooked. What's up, Duke Blaze? What are you looking at?
It's just that this thing is kind of like hurting my ears.
Oh, okay. Okay, thank you. So, don't wear masks that hurt your ears in the kitchen. Otherwise, you'll have to stop halfway and change everything. If you are going to use onions and you don't want them to be raw, saute them, roast them, do whatever. The beautiful thing about quiche is that if it will fit inside of the custard, it will be fine for the end result of your quiche. You can use as much cheese, any kind of cheese. You can use as much filling, any kind of filling as far as vegetables. You can put fruits in there if you really want to. Meats, of course, as long as they're pre-cooked. Now, what we're going to do today is we are going to have our half and half. We have 10 ounces of half and half. If you're at the store looking for half and half and they don't have it, what do you think half and half is made of, Duke Lace?
Halves?
It's made of halves. That's actually a good answer. But it is half milk and half cream. So if you're at the store and they don't have actual half and half, you just use 5 ounces of milk. I prefer whole milk. You could use regular milk. You could use water if you really wanted to. And then 5 ounces of cream. Cream will obviously give us a nice richness. We have 2 large eggs and 2 large egg yolks. And then we have seasoning and everything else to taste. So how do we do this? It's really, really simple. We add our half and half mix to the eggs. If you want to heat it and steep it with something, you can. If you want to put like whole Szechuan peppers in there and steep it, that's fine. Nobody wants to eat a whole Szechuan pepper, so we typically strain that out. I'm going to add a little bit of nutmeg. Some people might think nutmeg's weird, but it's really, really nice as a savory application. Some fresh black pepper. And of course, our friend salt. And this will be our very basic base for our quiche. Now we can use a fork, or if you have one of these convenient delis, you just mix it, mix it, mix it. Duke Blaze, can you hold this with both hands and shake, 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 shake? Both hands really tight, because if the lid comes off, you're gonna wear it, and then we can't eat it for dinner. Okay, shake it. I'm gonna check on our pie. Almost there. Shaking, shaking, shaking. Keep going, bud. We gotta make sure that's really well mixed. You could, of course, do this with a whisk or a fork or a blender, but this is way more fun. So I'm just going to keep going. So I'm going to have him do that. Now, for the filling of our quiche.
It's not fun at all.
It's super fun.
No, it's not.
You're getting, look at those muscles, right? Now, for our quiche today, I'm going to add some carrots. I'm going to use the same blender. I cleaned it out pretty well with the dough. We're going to toss everything in there. Some basil, a little bit of garlic. And then we still had some ricotta left over from our pancakes, so we will put some ricotta in there. How much? As much as you want. Right? The ricotta will set with the custard, and we will do 1,000,000%. I'm not sure how that's possible, but we could try. A little bit of ricotta. Done and done and done. Keep going.
I'm tired of this.
You're tired of this? We haven't even got started yet. Keep going. Make sure your thumb's really tight on there. Come on, shake it.
Okay.
And we're gonna pulse this if we plug it in. We're going to pulse this to make sure that we start breaking up. Nobody wants to bite into a whole piece of garlic.
We could just put this in there and then it will mix us for us.
Oh, could we? I don't know. It's more fun to watch you complain about having to do something, work for dinner once in your life. What do you think? Do you think? Nothing? Okay. So our custard goes in here. Be very careful if you are using your food processor at home. Not all of them are watertight. Hopefully you know that by now, but it would really be a shame for you to find out today that it's not watertight, as your custard base leaks out everywhere. So then we start mixing this. So if I'm making a quiche, other cheeses besides ricotta I could use, honestly anything. Here in America, cheddar is kind of king by and large. A beautiful cheddar cheese, some already cooked bacon, some caramelized onions. That is a delicious quiche. You could use Swiss and mushrooms, of course. Any classical combination you see anywhere else can go in or on the quiche, and you'll see what I mean when we start to plate it. So our pie should be about there. I'm gonna get it out, and we are gonna take the rice out. Are you ready? Do kaboom blaze?
It's just in case the steam almost burns my eye again, now stay put.
It's okay. All right. So this is hot. There's no question it's hot. But only the sides are set because what's under the rice is still completely raw. Now the reason we looped it over is we want to be able to pick it up and we have a nice little packet full of rice.
And
Leave it.
And another example of why we put it in there is that we don't want to burn ourselves.
Correct, yes. But those of you who've never baked with plastic wrap, you can see it's totally fine. It's going to melt, that's why we dripped it over, but it's fine. It doesn't leak into the food, it doesn't transfer any BPAs or anything. We're gonna gently dock our crust because the bottom, again, is still raw. So then we go back into the oven. You'll see it'll cook pretty fast at this point because everything's already heated up, but we need to make sure it's fully cooked. So in we go, and we check it until we get our desired doneness. Now, if we're gonna bake a custard in there, what's gonna happen is the custard, because of its nature, is gonna soften the crust in the baking process and especially after the baking process. So I always recommend baking something much darker than you would typically bake something if you're gonna put quiche in it. So if you're a golden brown delicious type, go full brown delicious, plus that extra little bit of caramelization from the butter and the flour is gonna be really, really nice. Let's talk about what other things can we put in quiche. What do you think, Blaze? What would you like in quiche?
Meat.
What kind of meat?
I would want fish.
Fish? You could put fish in there. I have definitely seen my share of smoked salmon quiche. You could put other fishes in there if you want. Just make sure that they are cooked or smoked or preserved in some way. Obviously, another really popular one is feta with spinach. You do not have to pre-cook the spinach, but it does help with the overall water content. Now, of course, the classic Florentine quiche, ham, cheese, sometimes a little bit of bacon, right?
And another thing that we could do if we wanted it to be more smoother or yummier, then we could put like a tiny bit of cream, you know?
Oh, a tiny bit of cream? Well, we have cream in the recipe, so it'll be... Okay, we could put tiny bit of cream to make it more smoother. But let's talk about, hold on, do Kaboom Blaze. Let's talk about what a custard is. So a custard is any mixture of liquid and eggs that is gelatinized through the cooking process. I know these are really romantic terms, but there are two types of custard. There are stirred custard, something like pudding, or there is a baked custard, something like quiche, cheesecake, creme brulee. These are baked custards. Now, if you think about a baked custard, a lot of times they can be what we consider brittle. They splinter and break too much. It's because they are cooked too hot. So to make a custard not scramble, first of all, and not brittle, second of all, we bake them at a pretty low temperature. When we're cooking eggs at a low temperature for a baked custard, we typically consider 325 to be the highest we would ever cook them. I recommend cooking quiche, because I like mine really smooth and beautiful, at like 300 degrees Fahrenheit. So that is again why we need to pre-bake our pie shell completely, because at 300 degrees the pie shell would never bake fully, and especially when it has the custard in there, it would never get like any kind of texture on the bottom. It would just be a giant soupy mess. So that's how we do it. Now, as kind of a pro tip looking forward, especially since we're killing a little time, if we start looking ahead at Thanksgiving or pie season in general, if you pre-bake all of your pie shells for pumpkin pie, sweet potato pie, any other kind of custard-based pie, lemon meringue, etc., it'll store for at least a week, because there's nothing in it that can really spoil if it's baked properly. And if you freeze them stacked together, stack 5 or 6 together, wrap them 2 or 3 times and freeze it, You can freeze them for about a month. Then you pull it out, put your pie filling in, and it takes a lot of the stress out of it.
Veggie Tales.
Yes, you could sing the song from Veggie Tales. Yes, you could do that if you wanted to be.
If you like to talk to tomatoes.
Apparently, we're just going right in.
I mean, if squash can make you smile, if you like to talk to potatoes.
Okay.
It's
And
something like that.
Are you a potato?
No, you are.
Oh, am I?
Yeah, you're a potato.
All right, so my crust is at the golden brown delicious stage. I'm gonna give it about another minute or two.
Wait,
and
can
then
I go see?
Sure.
I won't
Just-
open the oven, except I don't see.
Dressed as a stuntman, he's all about getting in there today. Oh, that's fine. Do we have any other questions since we're waiting about a minute or two?
Nothing.
Nothing? Do you have any jokes for us, please?
No.
No?
Wait, how about we do a Veggie Tale joke?
Well, so somebody may or may not have asked, but you might notice I have quite the collection of aprons. Each of them kind of tells a story, and this is maybe the most heralded or well-known apron in the world is the Blue Apron. A few years ago, the company Blue Apron came out and they started shipping meals to everybody, but the Blue Apron has been around for a much, much longer period of time than that. The Blue Apron is kind of like an idea. In France, everybody wears the Blue Apron during prep. Everybody. Chefs, sous chefs, everybody. And it basically indicates that, like, hey, we're all at the same level. We're all trying to get stuff done. We're just all on the same team. Blue aprons are on. The only person who would wear the white apron was the chef, and they would only wear it during service. So when you walk into a kitchen, typically, and everybody's wearing the blue aprons, it kind of, you know, harkens back to the romantic era of food where we were all in it just to put out food and no one's above anybody, everybody can do everything. There are also aprons I've gotten, there are also aprons I've gotten from places that indicate I was at that place. Some places have very custom aprons. Certain restaurants have specialty aprons, and once you work there, you can kind of wear it beyond that, and it's one of those things that's almost like a collection of aprons. And some of them I just buy at the restaurant store. You know, they're nice to have. But the blue apron is kind of a big deal because it just means, hey, we're all cooks. We're all in this to make food for everybody. It's a nice story, huh? All right, here we go. All right, so our pie crust is out. It is fully baked. We drop the temperature on our oven, leave it open because it'll get all that heat out of there. It will raise the heat in your kitchen quite a bit, but that's just part of doing business. Now, if you're using a cheese that is not a creamier cheese that you blended in here, a cheddar, a Parmesan, anything like that, do yourself a favor, sprinkle it on the crust while it's hot. It'll melt in, it'll create a little bit of a waterproof barrier, plus it'll be a nice way to get a little extra, just climb up please. It'll be a nice way for it to get more flavor in your quiche. What's up, Duke Blaze? What happened?
That scar that I had is still hurting.
Oh, Duke Blaze has a scar from a year ago that he noticed today, and suddenly the scar started hurting again. It's weird how that happens, huh? I'm sorry for your scar, bud. It'll be okay. Now, our dough is out. Still plenty hot. My oven temperature is dropping. The thing about baked custards is you need to be very good, a very steady hand, because if I fill it here, I want to fill it pretty much to the top, as high as I can go in the dough, because it shouldn't change shape that much. It'll probably balloon up a little bit, and then it'll collapse back down as it settles, but it won't like rise up all crazy. So you need to fill it to the top. If you're not the most steady pourer or someone who's good at walking with something full of liquid, sorry, Duke Blaze just yawned right in my face. Thanks for being here, bud. Then put this on your oven rack and fill it on the oven rack and then very slowly close it. Likewise, if you were using an aluminum pan, do yourself a favor. Put that aluminum pan on a sheet tray so that the sheet tray has enough stability to hold it. But here we go. We're going to pour our quiche in, pour it nice and low so we don't splatter. I like using the food processor because it blends everything really nice and even for me.
All of it?
Well, as much as it'll hold. Right? So there we go. You may have a little bit left over. You can use that for like a little mini quiche. We have the dough. If you've got a little form for it. You can chill it, or of course you can throw it away. Not the end of the world. Now, we're gonna see how good I am at walking nice and slow. We're gonna get this in the oven. Again, I do mine at 300 degrees Fahrenheit. The hottest you should go is about 325. This size quiche, this is a 9-inch quiche by about 2 inches tall. It'll take at least 45 minutes, probably closer to an hour, hour and 10 minutes to cook. If you want to sprinkle cheese over the top now, you can. Typically we sprinkle cheese over halfway after it starts to get a little bit of substance to it. But you can add as much cheese to the top of this thing as you want and just go extra crazy. Now, we're not going to make you stand here and watch us do anything for the next hour while this bakes, but we'll post the photo when it's done. Are there any final questions out there? So if I wasn't clear about the temperature of the oven, my recipe says 400. I did it at 425. I did it that hot because I'm in a hurry. You can do it at 400. Honestly, you can do it at 600 degrees if you have kind of the wherewithal to pay attention to how it's baking. I would recommend for home cooks to start at a lower temperature than what you're typically accustomed to. I'm used to going as fast as I can all the time at very hot temperatures. So 425 is where I went, so we didn't have to wait an extra 5 minutes today. The recipe says 400. As kind of a little tip, recipes and timelines and all, or temperatures and timelines and recipes are always a recommendation. They are not anything set in stone. There are so many factors: humidity, elevation, technically the specific gravity or the heat index of every ingredient in the recipe, which you probably aren't going to know. So it's always a guideline. If you can cook it hotter and faster, I fully believe that you should. The only time I make the exception is for a custard like this, where we should cook it cooler and slower so that it is more even in texture. Anything else, Duke Blaze?
No.
Okay, tell everybody bye.
Bye.
See you guys.